Conversation with Thabang podcast, where we say we want to move people from crisis to control. And today we have an exciting gentleman who came most studio Sarnar Klobua Lena Kibuaka and Charles Raphoto. The journey of rebirth, resilience, and reinvention. Because we hear people talking about this, but we never exactly understand what is that. And Tate Raphoto, South African educator, coach, and speaker, and an entrepreneur with more than 25 years of service in the public and private sector. So, Renale Giant, we're going to take a journey to try and help people, those who says, I am trapped. Some people's situations happen to them and they are now paralyzed. They can never come back from whatever that happened to them. Dr. Raphoto, good evening and welcome to our podcast.
Good evening and thank you for having me.
Dr. Raphoto, I want us to go back to, actually I want to go through your book structure because that's what I realize, you know, the way to your childhood in Soweto.
All right.
Yes, let's go back there. What was happening? Foundation.
Thank you for that opportunity.
Yes.
You know, I'm typically a township boy, like all township boys.
Yes.
We grow up in the township, and at the time, in fact, it was truly, and often people say that, I remember there were even Americans, or there would be songs about it, the dusty streets of Soweto.
Yes, no,
and it literally was the dusty streets, but what fun and what energy we experienced. So I grew up in Soweto in the 70s and 80s, and at the height of real instability. So sure, it was, but there was such an energy, you know. In the book, I get on to talk about the role of whistles.
Yes.
You know, there are 5 types of whistles that were used. You know, whistles are not just whistles. There are 5 types of whistles.
Yes.
The one is simply when you are celebrating something, you know, and so I had the disadvantage of not being able to do the whistles because I have a bit of a skew jaw.
Yes.
So you can't do the whistles the way the boys did.
Yes.
So I was seen as not as macho as the other boys. And the second whistle, by the way, is simply when you are a young boy, you're going to visit your girlfriend. There's a whistle for it, and she comes out, and you're hoping she comes out, and several others, including the one lady was reminding me that the 5th one is in their home. She says when they are in a shopping mall, if they want to locate each other, they've got a specific whistle for the family, and it was fascinating, and that we experience in the township. So when you are in the morning, the taxis are going past, that noise that comes through, the kids in the streets, the bars that are, the mothers that are complaining that the kids are not coming home to eat. So it is an environment that we grew up in. Now in Soweto, it is a township that happened by default because in the 1900s they just put people in the very beginning. So the nature of Soweto was created because I think it was the bubonic plague then, and they just put people in there to house them and to control the plague. And later on they just decided in the, I think it was late 30s that it becomes what we now know as Soweto. So I talk a bit about that, but what's important is I talk about some of the systemic things that were there, like the presence of the army in the township. You know, when you're in Soweto, every exit has an army base. You know, and in Soweto, every exit has a now SAB plant. And so at some point there were beer halls. So you can imagine some of the things that we experience in life right now, we think that they happened by default. It was by design, you know. And the money that was used, by the way, from the beer halls was used to run the Bantustan system. So that we were funding the very system we didn't like by drinking from the beer halls. And of course, I talk a bit about that, but it is just giving context about what nurtured the person that I had become in that buzzing space that is there. I talk about some musicians that were there who ended up used to rehearse go opposite. So I, you know, going past the house and I'm going to the shop. this is a blind man, but would say, "Hey, Charlie, where now?" You know. And I'd wonder how they knew that. That Sipho Mabuse used to take me along to Nagoya Kadi Peters, Sipori Peters, they used to call him, see them rehearse. So I had a very colorful childhood experience seeing all that.
And issue ya siblings influence. How did your siblings have that?
And I had two siblings that were from my father's side, not from the nuclear family, between my father and my mother.
Yes.
And my elder brother was in the States, so I never got to see him really. I only got to see him when in the 90s when he came back from exile.
Okay.
And my elder sister also was right across around the corner, go Middlelands, Ronaldo, go Dube. So I never knew her until we got to be adults, which was a pity. But we got to be very close because she was a warm, quiet person. Just made it just easy to get along.
Yes.
And then, of course, with my brother, he was an academic himself. He was an associate professor at Syracuse University. So we would have endless discussions about academia and thinking, etc. So I enjoyed that. And then, of course, they are now in the nuclear family between my mother and my father. There are 4 sisters. So I was the last one, and I'm the only boy.
Yes.
And all of them had different personalities, but all of them have had a different impact.
Yes.
But the one sister that passed away, which was the sad thing that brought me grief and depression, was she literally brought me up in terms of schooling, in terms of worldview. She was a librarian and very smart. But it wasn't also just about academia. She had this demeanor. She had the ability to be calm under fire.
And when there is fire, that Baba will just run away. Baba will fight.
Absolutely, and it's a rare demeanor that, because it then teaches you how to. When there's conflict, I always remember that her temperament, because it allows me to then be able to sit and listen to the discussions and then find a way, an entry point to then be able to. So that's the biggest actually contribution. But she's the one, she was instrumental in making sure that I go to school. When I failed my first attempt at matric in 1986, so I have a very good, interesting relationship with failure.
Okay.
Because I failed even then.
Yes.
But I was able to then, having gone back to school, past matric. But at the time as well, I went to a school in the Eastern Cape, the All Saints College.
Yes.
And it was a transition as well from, at the time, DET to, we were doing what is called the JMB exams, Joint Matriculation Board exams, which was predominantly for white people, and it was independent schools. So to do that, I had to do matric for 2 years, and which actually helped because some things came out from there, and it prepared me for university.
Yes. Reinvented Raphoto. Very important. But before I continue getting more deeper into your book, I'll check your life as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Everybody nowadays, they say they want to be the entrepreneurs, they want to get into business and all of that. But when you do your research, you find that most of these businesses in South Africa, they don't last for more than 2 years or 3 years.
Yes.
And they just vanish.
Yeah.
So from your side, when you zoom into that, what could be the problem? And maybe we'll start by defining how do an entrepreneur. I'm talking about Tawang who's making money, driving those flashy cars. What is an entrepreneur?
Yeah, but this is a very important point, because at some point, the way I grew up, I came to start working at the time when it was 1994, New South Africa, there were opportunities for black people. So our relationship with entrepreneurship was what opportunities do you get from government and opportunities for black empowerment. So it was really about getting into a space where you can get a windfall.
Yes.
It wasn't a typical entrepreneur spirit of starting a business.
Yes.
That you are really strongly believe in the business because it goes with perhaps your competence and your values, and then you build it up. So the idea of building something from scratch and building it up for it to last wasn't really top of mind. The idea was, how much money can I make quickly so that people can see me and I can drink the latest whiskey.
Yes. Because it's all about that.
It's all about that, and I could smoke cigars, the Cuban cigars, and it has to be Cuban.
It has to be
Cuban,
yes.
You know?
They even change the way they speak and the way they walk.
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
Raphoto,
you know,
see that?
How you doing? So the whole thing really becomes about impressions. And so it becomes part also of a larger lifestyle because there's just too much money around. There's all sorts of things. And what happens is that because you are chasing money so much, there's a lot of stresses that go with it because there's a lot of hard work, a lot of persuasion, and a lot of just getting on to make more money. So, and we at the time there were a lot of the retrenchments in companies, etc. So what it meant was that you are not loyal to any company as an employee, and you work, etc., and you move on. So even when you are doing enterprises, as an entrepreneur, you get into businesses that will make you money. It's not whether you're passionate about that business. It's, if someone says you have an opportunity to make money, you just go in there because the sole reason of going in there is to make money. Now later on, I came to understand that is not just the case. I remember I had a joint venture, a business with an established psychometric assessment business. It was quite nice, etc. I learned a lot out of it because that's where I started to learn about also coaching. So that was good. It gave me the foundation, but because of personality issues, we had a split. So I had a lot of small stints of entrepreneurship. And over the period of time, even recently, I started actually getting desperate in my attempts on entrepreneurship. I wanted quick cash, I'd do this business, that business, and they didn't work. And the major part of why they didn't work, and my business right now, I'm very confident of it because it resonates with my skills right now. And also it is the passion that I have about development and growing people. So all entrepreneurs, those that will have a business that are built to last, it would be advisable that they are doing businesses that are in line with their competence and their values, above all their values, and where they see themselves into the future. And where if the difficulties come up, because you are so passionate about this business, you can withstand the pressures that go with starting an enterprise. Because the nature, and someone mentioned the expression, if you really want to know yourself, start a business. Because you can't escape yourself there,
Again, going back to your book, Tabaya, Aspiration and Ascent.
Yes.
I want us to look into that because I wanted us to, summarize all these things and come to the real thing.
All right.
Because I know there is where you had 7th attempt of something that we'll talk about later.
Absolutely.
Of which I think it's very important to talk about it. So that people out there understand that how I feel more than you had to go through. But aspiration and assets.
Yes, and when every young person, when they grow up, they're really ambitious. They want to do something with their lives.
Yes.
And I lived right in the vortex of that ambition, because there's a certain vibrancy about where I grew up. Soweto, there's we had a bounce about us. Although apartheid wanted to just kill our spirit, but ourselves there growing up there, you saw people that were really confident about themselves, wanting to make it against all odds. So I was that ambitious person, and I moved from one business to one another. I would never stay, when I started working, I would never stay more than 3 years without getting a promotion, because I was hardworking. I was also driven by a host of things, because I grew up, my father used to call me the monarch of the house.
All right.
So, and that just, and everybody else would call me that, and then sometimes they call me Mojalefa, the last one, and you're the boss.
Yes.
And so while Mojalefa sounds like it's you are going to benefit, you are the heir to the throne, but what it really was for me was this burden I had to carry as the only boy. So success was something I had to do. It was a given. So I changed cars every second year. I had homes. At one point, I had 3 homes at one time. So buying and selling houses was just one of those things. I stayed in 4 cities. I got into executive positions. I would go. Some of those where the businesses have done well would go on a 3-day holiday as the executive to an island in Mozambique, Inaka Island. Beautiful, pristine beaches, The other one, we chartered a flight, went to Namibia at the time, to the salt pans. They had an island there where they had oysters. And they'd go there and they'd have oysters. And now I'm not, and to my detriment sometimes, I'm not a pretentious person. So when they eat these oysters, and some of my colleagues were eating them, the black colleagues, they were eating them. I had one black colleague who was in the board of that business. And he was eating them because it was a status thing, and he would say he enjoys it. I wonder if he did enjoy it, because they're like mucus, man.
I see that.
I couldn't eat that.
No.
Give me prawns anytime, but that, no, thank you. But it is the climate as an example of where I was at. And when I was doing an MBA, I had an elective to go overseas, and I elected to go to Boston. And I got some time to spend at Harvard with the MBA class at Harvard. So I had a very colorful experience abroad, in the UK. But at one point I went to a conference in Trinidad and Tobago via Barbados. Yes. So that broad experience, and as part of my for the university I worked for, I was a director of a student housing. Yes. And so at the time they wanted to also make sure that there are opportunities for black people, because executives were white people only. They did a development program for me. And I traveled to Australia to do 8 research intensive universities to learn their administration and how they do that. So I went to Sydney, Perth, Canberra, Melbourne, and to just study how these universities operate, etc. So I've had these exposures in life that help create this colorful worldview that I have. But together with it, because of the pressures of running around, etc., all you're doing, you never look back. It is always... I was advising a friend of mine who is the sponsor of this book, and he was moving from one job to another, and he didn't have a time in between jobs. And I was saying, hey, please remember this. I know that from myself, I was running every time. It was just looking forward all the time. And now I understand the wisdom of, if you're moving from one job to another, take maybe 3-month break to detox from the previous job, so that when you go to the next job, you are okay and you are ready for it. And there are very few people that actually, by the way, I was mostly working in the private sector. And when I got to work in the university, it was the first time I got to hear the concept of taking a sabbatical. They take sabbatical leave for about a year, do something else, the academics, to do that, something different, and maybe go and be a visiting lecturer in another university, but low intensive work, and to recharge. And in fact, now I got to understand the significance of that.
So the recharging.
Recharging,
Yes.
yeah.
Let's take a quick break. After this, I want us to get to the real issues.
Yes, yeah.
The mental collapse. You know,
Yes.
we are going through a lot, and people bipolar,
Yeah.
you know, especially being in South Africa. That they utlorinka through the experiences
All right.
that gave birth to still stating. Remember, I said one people who can tell us stories, and people who are saying, I'm still standing after all the storms that I went through. In conversation with Thabang. In conversation with Thabang, we still talking to Ntate Charles Raphoto. Hey, Ntate ona le bone lefatshe Ntate Raphoto ko re tsaking. We still need to talk about this because we are part of the world now. South Africa, we need to know what is happening out there. And then Ntate Raphoto unali tabatsinga tatsakarfanson. That I want us to talk about mental health breakdown. In South Africa, we're having a problem. Yeah, mafua kelelo in people because you know, you'll be stigmatized. We grew up in an environment where and it takes time to realize it's mental. What is it that you went through?
This is close to my heart because as I'm talking, understand my sister that comes before me. It was very close to me, and she suffered from mental illness, and eventually, after several attempts that I tried to stop her, but she eventually committed suicide. So that is close to me, and and also. Sadly, when it has happened in the family, you know, the idea, and I got to understand it later, the term for it's called suicidal ideation. What it means is that you start considering suicide.
Okay.
So once that, I suppose, a doorway is open, it is easy for you to see it as an option. That you could get to that suicidal space. But before I get to that, my sister died of suicide. But another sister who was close to me, the librarian, was also a pillar, really. She's the one that helped me with the education and so on. She also died within a 5-year period. And then my mother also died within that 5-year period. So I had triple grief. That had happened, and while that was happening, my entrepreneurial venture didn't work out at the time, and I experienced a lot of stress and depression at the time. And so I have seen a couple of psychologists, psychiatrists. I have a fair idea about their language, but also sadly, a part of that package in my trying to cope. And we see that happen a lot. I then was self-medicating through firstly alcohol, but it graduated to cocaine. So I got addicted to cocaine. So I went through several rehabs as well, and often loosely we say, you know, you are recovering. So even after years, you can say, and so I would technically say I'm recovering. But when you say you are recovering, people think that, you know, you'll relapse now. You know,
everything will just
but it's a nuanced thing, and people just need to understand that space because. True recovery actually happens when there must be some major shift that happens from you.
Okay.
And that major shift for me happened when I started doing a lot of, not the rehabs, but there's a lot of stories about that also built up. And this part is a part of like building a house. It's brick on top of brick until you build the whole house. And recovery is like that. But where you are now seeing yourself different is when you know that I will technically call myself a recovering addict, but I don't even consider myself a recovering addict. But I don't even think of that because I now understand certain things that I took for granted. We are a bundle of hormones and chemical reactions in our bodies. And some of those things that I found in addiction, actually I'm able to produce them myself. I run a lot. So I produce those hormones that otherwise would have been replaced easily by cocaine. The difference is that actually these kinds of addictions, people want the quick fixes. So they use them quick fixes, and sadly they have the consequence of that is that they erode your ability, your resilience is actually compromised. So for you to be resilient, these are not the ways to cope. So I'm very passionate about also talking constructive ways of coping with such stresses. But the big part of that is you really need to know yourself. For instance, I went into jobs because they were paying a lot.
Okay.
So if you get a job that pays you over 100,000 rand per month, you know, you just get it. You get an offer like that, you don't think twice because all you're driven by is money.
It's money, yes.
And then they don't give you the 100,000 rand for free. They give it to you because they know the amount of stress that goes with that job. And so they can firstly afford the medical aid that you will need, because you're going to be so stressed, you'll have ulcers and all sorts of things, high blood pressure.
I don't know, I understand when teachers go primary, geography, they used to say the higher you go, the colder it becomes.
Yes. Yeah.
But before we continue, I just love what you said. Honestly, people take decisions based on money.
Yes. Purely.
Yeah.
So if someone comes to you and they say there's a job and they show you the numbers, people just jump into the job. When in fact, if you know what you're about, if you know what is your inherent value as a person, and you know, and that takes a lot of work, because a lot of people haven't really said, but what am I about? If you understand that and you work diligently at it, you are likely to get there. You know, if you look around, all the people that have really made an impact, they knew who they are and they stuck to what they know best and they do it. Whether it is a politician, whether it is a professional, a medical doctor, this and that. I've got a friend of mine who is a medical doctor. He was always studious. But, you know, before you got to be a doctor, you started as a radiographer, you know, and he went on to study to become a medical doctor, and he went on to specialize, become a radiologist. But he always knew what he wanted, so he moved along, and, you know, so he's had a steady life because he worked at it. And it helped him also to be resilient because he knew what he wanted, he worked at it, and
I want to talk about that because, you know, in most cases when we interact with people, so how can that affect performance at work? Because sometimes you don't even see when you go in like that. You just wake up and go to your office and do what you're supposed to do and go home. Yes.
If you are only doing work because it is for the money, and by the way, it's 80% of people that are working, it is only for money. You know, if they had an option, they would get out of it. And you know, and of course, I'm not saying this out of judgment. I'm not judging them because it is a real thing. You have got to feed the family, and you've got to live. So I understand it. You know, and. Sadly though, right now, for instance, if you want to keep doing that, we will get the results that we always get right now. We'll get dysfunctional families because, you know, they used to say, you know, and so you will have sad, angry, bitter, resentful people because they do that which they do not like so that they can provide.
So indirectly, this thing you sabi happy comes in some kind of stress and depression that it can bring in.
Absolutely. And that's what used to happen. You know, when I look at Soweto where I grew up, most people worked in the mines, in the jobs they didn't like, and worked for white people only because they needed to make money. They come back and they need to have alcohol to distress. And there was also, it simply is again illiteracy about emotion. To understand emotions, you understand how do you deal with emotions. When you're feeling angry, sad, and so on, do you notice it? Because sometimes, people are angry, but they're not even aware that they are angry. They just you don't
even know. I want us to talk about something that you attempted 7 times and failed 7 times.
I mean, all that, some of it is drug-induced depression, some of it was just sheer depression. But all of it is a combination of exhaustion, because here I remember that career-wise, I'm changing jobs and all that. And here I'm studying while working as an executive and just studying part-time for an MBA and this. So the stresses that go with it, and also the divorces, the changes, the way that go with it. My sister just died of suicide, and I did 2 kids that I needed to take care of from my sister's side. And so, as the expression goes in colloquial speak, guningi.
It's too much.
It's a lot. You are carrying a lot. And so I was trying to run a 100-meter race, carrying this heavy sack on my shoulders as well. And
because when you talk about this, I saw one podcast, and somebody was saying people are wearing masks.
Yes.
And in fact, it's Machiavelli's thing when they say a lot of people are wearing masks, but if you can remove that mask, it goes deeper. So you try to kill yourself deep. 7 times and you failed.
I tried, and this is one failure that I am very grateful for. I failed 7 times.
Sure.
And all of it was really difficult. Some of it in Cape Town. I had renovated a 1972 Beetle, and I was at my worst depression. I drove up to Table Mountain, and I just wanted to drive down, and something just, I wanted to drive. I started trying to drive. That day, the Beetle just didn't move. I tried. And when I woke up and feeling better, start.
That thought
it will. But that deep suicidal ideation, or man, I would be better off if I were dead, and I wanted to just get rid of this pain.
But would you say that Raphoto? There's this thing in my culture.
And I know that, and we never even as men talk about pain, or talk about especially emotional pain. We can talk about physical pain. We talk about the muscles, the what
that
we can talk about.
That emotion.
It is the tangibles we talk about, but the emotions we don't, because as men you are taught from the get-go that you are a man. Toughen it up.
Sure.
Don't why cry. Men don't cry. Don't cry. And that in itself is not good. And our boys, we really need to bring them up differently.
Because you see what is going out there. As you speak like this, Western Cape and all over the country. Would you say these boys, the gangster and stuff, but trigger work on you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. The reason why I got to write this book is I went to a retreat with a lot of my colleagues, male colleagues. It was the 8 of us. We went to a farm of one of the colleagues. We were sitting in his farm over that weekend, and we were sitting around the fire, and we started talking about some of the emotional pains that we're going through, which is quite rare. And it led to one guy writing a report there after it. It sounded like a psychologist is writing, and he sent it to us about how we interacted.
But would you say those kind of get together that sharp? Because when we get together, get drink, look for women and all of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Men get together so that they have an excuse to get a score with women or something like that. But it's rare that you get men that get together and have real discussions.
Yes.
But they get together, it is about the discussions about howling and just a banter about men talking about nothing. But it is rare that men really sit and have a real in-depth discussions about things that worry them. And all of them, by the way, are driven people in their own rights, professionals in their own rights, making things happen, and extraordinary people. But we all shared that emotional pain that... and there's also a language with men about talking about emotions.
Yes.
We won't talk about the emotion, but we'll talk about the experiences that have happened that elicit certain emotion, but we don't call the emotion. So you'll never say grief, you'll never say sadness, but you'll talk about, for instance, the loss you experienced, which actually brought sadness, but you'll never say I was sad.
So conversations that we have as men, we just talk about the experience, but we don't talk about the root causes. And then at the end of that, there's also symptoms. It's anger. And somebody else get angry. Why? Because we hear sad things or but how do we get out of that? As we speak, somebody's watching. Thanks God that Jesus decided to switch off the Beatles. Because I work in the media space, I talk to men, and a lot of men are angry.
And but this is the thing, a lot of men are angry, etc., because there is really no platform. And people need to feel safe for them to do that. I believe the what I call the hearthside discussion, which is the fireside discussion, created a safe space for all the men to feel comfortable to say the things that they were saying. And also it needs to be handled with its sensitivity. And so it was handled that way. At the end of that discussion, the person that facilitated this, not in a therapeutic sense, but in a brotherly sense, brought us all together. Asked us to even hold hands together because to acknowledge this moment, this cathartic moment about understanding the pain that we all experience.
Really important, and I want us to help us create that. And I'm reading a lot of these books, and you will be told about a safe space.
Yes.
How would you define that safe space? Because sometimes it's I've got men's problems in bed or whatever.
Yes.
But how do we create that safe space?
I think but it's a good point, and also it is contextual. If you know each other, it's good to have one person who will be vulnerable amongst the other males and say something that is about their vulnerability emotionally. Maybe they've suffered a loss and so on, and they feel something deeply, and sometimes one man having suffered something and then they break down and they cry. Because they've shed a tear, they give permission to others to be vulnerable. And the others then they are able to then say, hey, but I also had this, man, and this is how I felt about it. And then that permission that has been given to the group helps others to also open up. So in that context, that's how you
that's
do
a safe
it.
Space.
It's a safe space that's created.
And in our families, because but one parent was saying to me, no, but you are always busy. Don't switch off your phone and pay attention to kids. What would you say about that space?
And it's true. By the way, parents, so they were somebody's child. And these parents have actually learned some of the behavior from their own parents. Because our own parents, in the quest to provide material things, food, shelter, and so on, were running. They come back home, they're exhausted. They don't have the time. And patience is linked with time. So you can't have patience, you can't make time if you don't have patience, but the patience is linked to time, because it says if you're going to listen to somebody, and because my work is coaching, an effective coach is a coach that understands that they need to make the time because they're going to have to sit and listen to the next person. So as a parent as well, that is the challenge. It's about sitting and listening to a child. Now, most of the time we grew up, a child has to be spoken to.
Yeah,
And,
I wanted to say that
yes.
because that's what at that particular time, something is not good with me.
Something is not good with you, but because that hasn't happened, it becomes difficult for the child to open up.
Yes.
And our relationship, in fact, with parents and elders is when they are scolding you or when they are telling you. And I marvel at this. I interact with people, and sometimes when they want to talk to you about something, they just bluntly give you an instruction.
Okay.
People are quick to give instructions to what to do and not to do. People don't have the time to persuade. And an effective speaker is one who has the ability to listen.
Actually, those are the principles.
Yes.
That is not about you as a coach, it's about your client.
Absolutely.
And you don't tell them what to do. That Shimi, Mr. Producer, we must have a second episode that Raphoto, because we need to explore this issue, mental health even deeper. There are things that we didn't touch on, but I would really appreciate if we continue in that Raphoto as the producer, calling that Raphoto again. We need 5-10 episodes. There's so much here that we did not talk about that will help somebody who is trapped somewhere, and somebody who have just decided, or no, enough is enough. It's good for me to just go. We still need to unlock that door. Because bana ba bangata ba fetoa dison. Na me father to girls, and bana ba banana ba shebile ntate ba rata ntate o feta mme wa bona. So I'm just thinking, if I'm not there, ke ba feel experience tse pedi ke ipolaile and I'm absent.
Yes. Yeah.
So Ntate Raphoto, thank you very much for coming in, but this is just the beginning of our journey, because we need to talk about still standing. And you were once homeless.
Yes.
So I want our viewers to just pause and then the next episode. Homeless. From being this executive and being all over the world. Absolutely. Till we meet again next time, God bless.